The all-new Inside Sources. Inside Sources. Your inside access to the people and policies shaping Utah's future. Here are Greg Skordas and Holly Richardson on KSL NewsRadio.
We're learning about a lawsuit that has been filed by Kevin Franke against Jodi Hildebrandt. And if you'll recall, Holly, Kevin Franke was the husband of Ruby Franke, who is currently in prison with Jodi Hildebrandt. Jodi Hildebrandt
for a
very long time, for child abuse, child neglect, and just the way that they treated everyone in this situation. Kevin Franke is the husband of Ruby, and he's saying that effectively Jodi Hildebrandt was acting as a medical professional, and so if you read the lawsuit, it's kind of a medical malpractice case.
That's so interesting to me. So if you want to just remind our listeners, tell us about this case.
Yeah, so this one was really interesting. Jodi Hildebrandt had a group that she had set up, and she was counseling women, and I know this case fairly well because I actually represented another man who was similarly situated to Kevin Franke, but she would get women involved in these groups, and they would meet, and they would have like counseling sessions and whatnot. And what she did in this particular case, I'll just focus on the Franke case. She separated Ruby from her husband and almost took control of the children themselves, to the point where they were abusing them, they were starving them, they were taking advantage of these poor kids. And they had convinced her husband, Kevin Franke, that he was not doing the right things, that he was bad, that he was he goes through this thing that they convinced him that he was, not living the doctrine of the church, not living the doctrine of what she thought was appropriate, and sort of separated him from his own children. Now, she ultimately went to prison, and his wife ultimately went to prison for the abuse that they put on these children. It was horrible what they'd done with the children in terms of their methods of punishing the kids. But he also was punished. He was separated from his children. His children were violated, and so he's filed this lawsuit against Jodi Hildebrandt.
Wow. So one of the things that stood out to me, I remember, hearing this as it was unfolding. It's been a couple of years now, August actually of 2023, but their 12-year-old son at the time escaped out of a window and ran to a neighbor's home down in Ivins. He had duct tape around his ankles and his wrists, and he was really malnourished. When police went to Hildebrandt's home, they arrested her, and they found their daughter hiding in a closet, and took hours for her to come out. And if I remember, one of the things that really stood out to me is the little boy was apologizing. He's like, I'm so sorry, right? He was trying to take the blame.
Right. Ruby Franke ran what she called the 8 Passengers YouTube channel, showcasing her family and building a huge following on the channel.
I'm only going to say it one more time, and then you're going to lose the privilege to eat dinner.
My bedroom was taken away for 7 months, and then you give it back like a couple of weeks ago.
I don't think our viewers know that.
That's what she was teaching people. And so now she's been sued by Kevin Franke. Now, you're probably wondering, why file a lawsuit against a person who's doing probably 30 years, maybe more, in prison? And there's some notion, and just sort of reading between the lines here, that Jodi Hildebrandt had developed some sort of an estate, had actually earned some money during her practice, malpractice I'll call it, and had developed some sort of an estate. So if she has commissions or royalties from any of her writings or her books or anything like that, if she purchased property in her name or in her business name, and there's property to be had, he's going to go after that and get that. She may not have anything. I'm certain that this isn't going to be covered by insurance. I mean, I don't know that she had insurance. But what was even more interesting to me was how the attorney, his attorney actually did a very good job writing this lawsuit, characterized her as a medical professional, because she really isn't a medical professional.
So my understanding, and you're the legal expert here, the medical part that they're claiming is because she claimed or represented herself as a licensed professional, but she wasn't in fact licensed. Is that correct?
Exactly. So she held herself out as having a professional licensing, credentials, reputation, and education as a licensed clinical mental health and care professional. And she said that she even referred to herself, and I'm reading the lawsuit here, as a psychologist, and led them to believe it. So they actually believed it. And there's some police interrogation where she describes herself that way. So it wasn't just lying to her clients or patients or people that were paying her. she lied to everyone about her credentials. And what
My
she was
understanding
doing.
is psychologists like a PhD level.
Right.
And she was more of a life coach, which I think is one of the things that Utah's legislature is looking at and say, look, you can't hold yourself out as somebody who's this licensed professional, right? Where you're doing life coaching, quote unquote.
Right. So and she also was doing something that he's described in his lawsuit here as diagnosing. Saying, okay, here is your problem. So that's not something you can do without some credentials.
That is correct.
Is give someone
that is correct.
A diagnosis.
So I can speak to that one actually. It is the practice of medicine in Utah. If you diagnose, prescribe, or treat for something that could be considered within the medical purview, right? And it can be anything, unless there's a specific carve out, and there are a few, including midwives. You cannot diagnose, prescribe, or treat.
Yeah. So this enterprise, Hildebrandt's group, really got quite big, and I think that she felt that she was invincible and that she had such a great following and that she was doing such good and important work that she was just going to continue to get followers and convince people to give her money and that she was doing them good. But it all blew up on her eventually because, like you say, it only takes these children to break out of that system and say, hey, there's something bad going on here. And then the police start doing an investigation. And in this case, the investigation became much more. I'm sure when they found the first child who was upset saying, hey, there's stuff going on in this house, nobody expected what they were going to find.
Right.
And it got to the point where, I mean, you don't even want to get into the details, but what was happening to these kids was just horrific.
Remind me though, wasn't Hildebrandt living with Ruby Franke
Right, yes.
at the time?
Yes. So
Okay.
she did this routinely as a part of her practice where she would separate couples and sort of put the man in the doghouse. Like you're bad, you're a pervert, you have these problems. We're going to work on those. And she took his wife in and his children in to her place and effectively raised them and excluded him from their lives, at least according to his lawsuit, believing that this was part of the medical treatment, part of what he needed to go through because he was, he had lustful thoughts and things like that. And she was trying to, I guess, arguably cure him of that. But
so she must have had plenty of assets because she had a $5 million home in Ivins.
Right. Yes. And I'm sure that he's very interested in that. The lawsuit's filed in 4th District, but it's something that, I mean, maybe there's some assets. Who knows? Maybe she's hidden them. We don't know that either, but we do know that she's not going to be using that home anytime soon.
So time frame, are we looking at months here?
Oh, this case could go on for a long time. Now, it depends on what her level of fighting is. Is she going to hire a lawyer and fight the lawsuit? If so, it could go for years. Is she just going to
she's
say,
broke now,
yeah,
right?
do whatever you want and take your judgment. I'm never going to pay it. The lawsuit could be wrapped up in a month or two. So, I know that's sad to say. I also think, just from what I know about this, that there are going to be other cases brought. I think other men are going to see what happened here.
Well,
Excuse me.
I can see a class action suit.
Yeah, and bring their own. And it wouldn't surprise me at all.